Hello from the MKM Stadium car park on a night to forget for Hull City, beaten 4-1 here by Middlesbrough. We'll keep this fairly brief because it's 11:30 and nobody needs to hear me in a car park in the rain in December waffling on about a pretty bad night for all concerned. It didn't start well. City were a goal down after 9 minutes. It got gradually worse thereafter. They were 4-0 down at half time. And if we're brutally honest, it's probably been coming, if we are, as I say, pretty honest about it. They could have been 3 or 4 down at Norwich in the first half. They weren't. They could have been 2 or 3 down at Stoke just last Saturday. They weren't. You kind of felt at some point somebody was going to take advantage of Hull City's shambolic defending and their structure. And it was Middlesbrough who tore them to pieces. The funny thing being, I think Middlesbrough only had 5 shots on target in the game, scored 4 of them. But the problem was it was 4-0 at half-time. The game was over. On the plus side, City won the second half 1-0. Joe Gelhardt got the first penalty of the season. Although replays, I haven't seen it myself, but replays apparently show that Gelhardt wasn't touched by the goalkeeper. But he went down, he got a penalty and scored the penalty. So at least City won the second half 1-0. Gallows humour and all that. But it was just a shambles. There's no other word for it. Any word of that ilk to describe, as Lee said, woeful tonight, that was one word for it. Some of the stuff that they did was incredible. There was a moment where a ball went over the top and Egan and Pandor went for the same ball, or sort of Egan left it for Pandor. They bumped into each other, the ball span away, and luckily it went out for a corner. Otherwise, if it had fallen at the feet of Morgan Whittaker, he would have rolled it into an empty net, and that kind of set the tone really for what was just a haphazard first 45 minutes. Amir Hadzimitovic was dreadfully exposed, particularly the first goal. The first goal was the killer one. City were on the front foot, ball over the top. He was caught out down the right hand side for pace. Ball cut back, and it was fired in from 4 or 5 yards out. The second one and the third one followed quickly. The fourth one, the Whittaker goal was a nice one. He killed it in, but it's the ease at which teams are creating chances, and we've seen it all season. Go back right to the start of the season at Ashton Gate. They conceded 4 goals at Ashton Gate, 29 shots on their goal. No team in this division has conceded more shots on their goal than Hull City. There's such a disparity between, they are the second top scorers in the league behind Coventry, but they are the second worst defence behind Sheffield Wednesday, and Sheffield Wednesday are already in League One effectively. So everything that we've seen for the last few weeks came home to roost tonight. They just got punished, and it needs tonight has to be a watershed moment for Hull City under Sergej Jakirovic, because this can't carry on. In terms of they've done so much good, they're still in a great position. They've had a great start to the season, 19 games in, but if they're going to be a team that are capable of competing at the top end of the league, they've got to tighten up, because you cannot afford to be conceding the amount of chances, and the goals that they're conceding are so bad. They're all avoidable. They're all, silly passes, pointless passes, errors, break down the communication. It's happening game after game. Every single game, the same thing is happening. And so, unless they can stop doing that, they're going to end up dropping down the table like a stone. And the second half of the season is going to be a real problem for them. And that's not to be over dramatic, but we've seen this coming throughout the last few weeks. Yes, the second half at Stoke was amazing. The first half wasn't. The second half at Norwich was amazing. They went and won the game. Fair play. But the first half, they got away with it in those games. Tonight, they got absolutely ruthlessly taken to the cleaners. And collectively, they're a mess defensively. There's no structure. There's no organisation. Nobody taking control. Normally, Shemi Ajay is really solid, really organised. He was taking risks tonight. He was giving the ball away. Egan the same. Amir in midfield was just a passenger. 3 goals, he was caught out, and the game just passes him by. And I like I say, tonight was one of those nights where, against the team that are second in the table, they ruthlessly exposed their frailties and their deficiencies, and they made them. It was embarrassing in that first half. As I say, credit to them in the second half. They won the second half. They showed a bit more fight. They showed a bit more determination. Their structure was better in the second half. How much of that was down to Middlesbrough sort of switching off and going, well, we're 4-0 up, the game's done? I don't know. But, you know, if you're going to hammer them in the first half, you have to give them credit for coming out and showing a bit in the second half. But by that point, the game's done and dusted and you're 4-0 down. I think Fletch came up with a stat the last time that City conceded 4 in the first half was against Middlesbrough a few years ago. So incredible stat there from Fletch. But tonight was just one of those nights where nothing went right, everything went wrong. The midfield for me is a big worry. We've obviously known for a while there's no John Lundstram. He came back at Stoke, had a real impact both during the second half and after the game. But he's now got a knee injury, could be out for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Clearly the manager isn't settled on the system in there, because if you think at Stoke last week, Darko JB started, had a poor first half, was hauled off at half-time. Amir started tonight, so JB was on the bench tonight. One of 2 changes. Amir was back in the team tonight, hooked at half-time after a shocker. He's got a problem. You know, Regan had a poor first half, was better in the second half, but can't do it himself. And David, midfield not combative. I can't even say, it's too late. Not combative enough. I still can't say, I'll give up. What a mess. We're all a mess. But yeah, the midfield is a real problem. That control at Stoke last weekend when they dropped Matt Crooks deeper, that made an impact. Second half today, he dropped Crooks. Maybe that's something he's got to look at going forward. Having Regan in there with Matt Crooks, is there enough legs, enough dynamism? I'm not too sure. They need to get Lundstram back. Obviously, Matarzo's coming back, but that's still a long way away. You know, Matarzo's coming back from an ACL. We're not going to see the best of Elliot Matarzo probably till February, March time. I wonder if they've got to try and do something in January as a short-term measure, whether it is going to try and get Zambrano back from Slovenia at Maribor. They've got to try and do something, because the midfield is costing them games. And yes, defensively tonight, and I've always tried to stick up for the defence, because I think sometimes the lack of cover, the lack of protection further up the pitch has an impact on the defence, and they're then woefully exposed. But tonight, they were all awful. Defensively, as a back four, a back five, they kept giving the ball away. They were not picking up the men. Obviously, just the goals were just shambolic. But the midfield, for me, the engine room of the team always generally dictates how a game goes. I mean, Hayden Hackney in midfield for Boro tonight was absolutely... I mean, he's a different level. He should be playing in the Premier League, and will be at some point, whether it's for Boro this season, well, next season, or whether he'll leave Boro in the summer and go and play in the Premier League if they don't win promotion. Hackney was on a different level, but City still didn't get near him. They still weren't... There was nobody in midfield thumping into tackles, closing down, pressing high. They just sat off and let Middlesbrough pick passes for fun. And then if you give the quality of Boro and the investment that Boro have had in their players, the time and space, and you give them the ball, they're going to murder you. And that's exactly what happened. So, look, tonight is a wake-up call. They've got away with it. And we always felt that at some point it would catch up with them. There have been so many games this season where we've come away going, Christ, they could have been outside. They could have been 3 or 4 down at half time. They've recovered in the second half and they've got a result. And you give them immense credit for that. Tonight, they were awful in the first half, having started the first couple of minutes quite brightly, in fairness. And then they've got absolutely blown away. And credit to Middlesbrough, who were by far and away the better side. Job done in the first half. Clinical, didn't have a huge amount of chances in the game. But didn't need to, in the sense that they scored 4 in the first half and took it away from the Tigers. And a lot of fans, after the third goal went in, credit to the ones that stuck it out, because tonight was horrible. The game was 8 o'clock kickoff anyway, then delayed to 8:15 because of all the traffic chaos and everything that went on the Humber Bridge. We obviously send our thoughts to the people involved in that, because I came past it on the way into the ground and it didn't look great. So that obviously is not ideal. But yeah, credit to the supporters that stayed right into the bitter end, because that was a tough night. But it can happen. You know, it can happen. When you play with feathers, you get your backside tickled, and City play with feathers. And as I say, I think tonight it's caught up with them. Let's have a look at the comments before we head off. Ian, with Ollie now back, at least we can drop Crooks back into central midfield where he's needed. A lot better when he's there. Hadzimirhovic not to this level. Let's have a quick. Lee, too weak in midfield. Can't disagree. David, I've already touched on the. I can't even say that word anymore. I've gone. Matthew, no organisation at all tonight with the balls. Yeah, just I can't disagree. It was just a mess. The whole thing was a mess. I think it's one of those nights that, as I said before, they need to move on from it fairly quickly. They've got a game here against Wrexham on Wednesday night. That is, say, must win at this stage of the season, and they're still in a good position. But I think after they're starting to lose games now. They've lost. You've lost to Derby, you've lost to QPR, you've lost to Ipswich, you've now lost to Boro. Yes, you've got a couple of wins in there, but they're starting to lose games with too much regularity, and it's the same kind of story throughout in terms of the goals they're conceding. David, it's been coming for a while, but teams have missed chances. Yeah, I said that. Like I say, not to be too clever, but I think those of us that have watched City enough in the last few weeks have seen, wouldn't say necessarily seen it coming, but you've always felt that something like this isn't too far away, and that against a team that are clinical in front of goal, it could be a problem, and that's ultimately what's happened tonight. It's been a problem. They've got hammered, but as I say, this has to be a bit of a kind of a fork in the road for them, because I guess subconsciously, if you're giving up chances but you're coming away from Norwich with a 2-0 win, you're giving up chances but you're coming away from Stoke who were second with a 2-1 win, you could sort of go, it's all right, we're riding the luck a bit, but we're winning games. Now they've got pumped. Now it's got to be, right, hang on, this is serious. We're in danger of throwing away all our good work in the opening 18 games of the season, and we could get dragged down the bottom end of the table if we're not careful, if we keep conceding. 34 goals in 19 games is ridiculous. Yes, they've scored 31, but you can't, and we've said it week after week, you cannot keep conceding 2-3 goals a game and expect to win too many games. They've got away with it. Their luck's run out tonight. Now from Monday or from Sunday, as they'll be back in, they've got to get back into the groove. They've got to find a way of being more compact. They were for 60 minutes against Ipswich. They were in the second half tonight. How much of that was because Boro had eased off and put themselves back into neutral because the game was done and dusted? It's a difficult one to judge in that respect. They've got to be more compact. They've got to take more responsibility. They cannot keep playing this kamikaze style and gifting up 3-4 goals a game, because they're just going to lose games, and they've got a real opportunity. We've said it before, they've got such a good opportunity this season with how open the league is. Yes, Coventry are starting to pull clear, but the rest of it, second place and third, fourth, fifth and sixth is so open. On that basis, they've got no chance. But we've seen this season already against Southampton, Leicester, other games, Sheffield United, away from home. We've seen they've got this team is capable. They've got quality, but they're going to undo all that opportunity if they do not tighten up. And yes, the manager needs to take responsibility. Dean Holden and the coaching staff have got to take responsibility, and they've got to come up with a formula of being more compact, but still playing on the front foot. They can do it. I don't believe it's all or nothing. I don't believe it's a case of, okay, if we shut up shop at one end, we're not going to score at the other. I don't believe that, because they've still got players in their team, particularly with Miller, Bellumi, Gelhardt's in great form, McBurney coming back. They're still players that will score goals, will create goals. They've just got to find that balance between being more resolute and starting to get back to keep. They've not kept a clean sheet since Norwich. That's a month ago. They're not giving themselves any kind of platform to go on and win games consistently now. That's why they're consistently losing games, and they're dropping in, a win every now and then. Yes, I know the stat before the game was they'd won 6 in 10 and only Coventry had got a better record. But if you drill down more recently, what's that, 4 defeats in 6 on the flip side. So they've got to find a way of tightening up, because, as I say, it would be a tragedy if they pass up this opportunity that they've given themselves by just giving such crap goals away, stupid errors, and they're better than this. Those players, John Egan, Shemi Ajayi, they're better than giving the goals away tonight that they've given away. So there's a lot of work they need to be. There's a lot of work to do, but at least they are in a competitive position. Vic, let's read some comments before we cover it off and finish. Jason, Jason, I know you're a regular on the podcast, so thanks for getting in touch. That's been coming for weeks. Leicester Derby, Stoke, Norwich. We've been expecting it. I was there to the end. It was completely forgettable. Let's have a look. Michael, I stopped until the end and seen worse. Victoria, I was embarrassed, to be honest. First time I've left before half time. Cold, wet, fed up. Sort the defence out. It's been a while since I've seen a worst half. Paul, full team were awful tonight, especially midfield. Crooks was poor. Slater, Joseph couldn't control the ball. When Miller came on and was just appalling, giving the ball away. Foolish not starting Bellumi, Hughes, etc. Luke says he needs to throw Bellumi in from the start. A couple of points to pick up on there. I can't argue with anybody that went home at 3-0. I mean, let's be honest, given the conditions, given the roads before the game, and given that first 40 minutes, you know, yeah, and it's a Friday night before Christmas. I mean, you could have been back home for I'm a Celebrity, couldn't you? It was. I can't fault anybody that wanted to go. Fair credit to the people that stayed. Glutton for punishment, but yeah, tonight was just a horrific. Dan, a really average team has gone over and above everyone's expectations. How can anyone moan about? Sorry, let me scroll. How can anyone moan about how far we've come? We were going to get found out at some point, and the better teams with better players will always find a way. Finish the season now. We'd all take the lead position. We're now. We're not going down. Job done. Paul says, I personally think seeing Boro tonight, we know our standard, and mid-table is what we need to accept. I was optimistic, but now I'm more realistic with a mid-table finish. Look, I think what I would say is I think we shouldn't overreact. Look, they've been absolutely torn to pieces tonight. We shouldn't lose. You know, write everything off after tonight. Boro are a good side, and they're capable of doing that. City aren't at full strength either, and in this league that can happen if you're not at it. And when you gift up so many opportunities, that can happen. I still think they're a good side. I still think there's a reason to be optimistic, and I still think if turn of the year they're in and around the top 10, that's been a hugely successful first half of the season, and it gives them an opportunity. I come back to the point that I keep making, and I've made for weeks. It doesn't really change that. On their day, with everybody fully fit, I think City can match anybody. The problem is when they're not at it and they're not at full strength, it's a problem. And a lot of teams in that league have got a better team than them. And I just think Boro's attacking fluidity was a real problem for them, and it found out Ajay and Egan tonight particularly. But I think if you can get to a point where your front four is Miller, Bellumi, Gelhardt, McBurney, I think that's a real positive. It's going the other way. Charlie Hughes wasn't risked tonight. Obviously, I can understand why he wasn't played. He was left out because of his hamstring at Stoke. He didn't play. Ajay and Egan were terrific in that second half, deserved to keep the shirt. Now, Ajay and Egan have had a bad night. That gives him an opportunity to bring in Charlie Hughes on Wednesday. Equally, you know, I kind of expected Bellumi to start tonight. He didn't. I would be shocked if Bellumi didn't start on Wednesday night, because Carl Joseph was totally ineffective, but so many of them were as well. So, you know, as the manager said to me, I could have taken all 11 off at half time. So, look, like I say, emotions are always high after defeats, any defeat, particularly one like that here. But I think if they get back to winning ways on Wednesday, you know, McBurney will play on Wednesday. That's a positive. Miller will play more on Wednesday. Bellumi probably starts on Wednesday. Charlie Hughes probably starts on Wednesday. Still think the big concern is the middle and obviously John Lundstrom being out, but that you can't affect that now. It is what it is. But like I say, I still think they're a team, you know, getting to grips with everything. I still think they can have a good season. I don't think it's the end of the world because they've been beaten by a team that, let's be honest, at the start of the season, were back to be top 6. were expected with what they spent to be top 6. City were not. City have been the surprise package. I think they've all raised expectations based on what we've seen, but I think there's always been that sense of realism in the back pocket going, yeah, but they could get a battering at some point because of how they play. They're still, they've still got a lot of players coming back from injury or not available, and that's caught up with them. It caught up with them at QPR. Yes, they've had some bad defeats at Watford, Derby, QPR that they should never have lost. They weren't beaten by, Watford, Derby, QPR were not better teams, and I'd argue for 65 minutes nor were Ipswich, although they've got a better squad. Those three, Watford, Derby and QPR, were games there I thought they threw away, and they were in positions of strength in all 3 games. They threw those away. So they're 3 defeats that are on them. I think tonight, yes, they were awful, and yes, they gave the goals to Boro, but I think tonight they were beaten by a better team. And so I think sometimes you've just got to, okay, the manner of the defeat makes it sound worse. The way they played in that first half makes it look a lot worse. But I just thought Boro were fitter, were stronger, were sharper all over the pitch, and were full value for that victory tonight. Those 3 defeats I've just mentioned, Watford, Derby, QPR, they were thrown away. They were totally avoidable. If they'd have got, even 3 points, got a point each from those games, that would be a lot better than 3 defeats. And the Ipswich one felt worse because of QPR, and can happen because of the quality that on any given minute Ipswich can turn it on. Yes, they're having a poor season by their standards, but they've got better players, better squad, and a manager that's already won promotion. So I think the Ipswich game could have happened. It was, again, the manner of the goals, and we just keep coming back saying the same thing every week, aren't we? We're saying the same thing. It's the goals they're conceding. They're so bad. They're almost like Sunday League level at times, the goals they're conceding. And until they can find a way to stop that, we're going to be having these same conversations after defeats. They're going to be a team. They're going to be streaky. They're going to win a couple of games. They're going to lose 3 or 4 games. They're going to win a couple of games, lose a couple, because they're streaky, because they can't keep clean sheets. And that is a fundamental flaw in their approach. If they could find, the ideal scenario is you want the defensive situation that we saw at times in the second half of last season, where they were really resolute at times. Yes, they lost some games 1-0, Cardiff away, Derby at home, to bad goals, but genuinely they kept, they had the ability to keep the odd clean sheet, but they couldn't score. Now they've flipped it round. They can't keep clean sheets, but they score plenty of goals. They've got to find a way. So that's it. Right. At the risk of waffling on until midnight, I'm going to call it a day. Quick couple of pointers. We expect Lundstrom to be out for the next 2 to 3 weeks with a knee injury. Some kind of ligament problem he's picked up in training. Big blow for him and for Hull City as well. On the plus side, Miller back on the bench tonight, got 25 minutes. McBurney on the bench, not used, but on the bench. Will play, we expect, on Wednesday night. And another 45 minutes in the tank from Mohamed Baloumio, who was excellent when he came on. And another goal for Joe Gelhardt, won the penalty, scored the penalty. That's, 8 goals in 10 now for Joff. I know it counts for little in the context of the game, but another goal for him. So that's a positive. Look, it's been a bad night all round. It's about how you bounce back, and they've got the chance to do that on Wednesday night against Wrexham here at the MKM Stadium. That's it from here. We'll have the podcast with you on Monday. We'll be with Sergej and a member of his first team squad at the training ground on Monday to preview that game and see if they can find a way of getting out of this defensive mire that they've got themselves into. Thanks for all your comments, everybody. David, we've got to be realistic. Hopes of top 3 are way off the mark. Don't disagree. Paul, no complaints on the result tonight. I think the fans deserve better effort than was shown. Game was over at half time. Mark, Panda's poor. Always has a mistake in him and he can't kick. Defence is poor. We're a mid-table team. Just quickly before I read a couple more. Attilia, we're a top 6 team with Gelhardt, Miller, Baloumio and McBurney. Just need to fix the defence. Paul, all players are due an off day. So lots of good comments coming in, everybody. I'll try again. Thanks for watching this god-awful hour. Try and have a good weekend. It could be worse. It could have been that god-awful sycophantic World Cup draw, couldn't it? England, Croatia. That's one to look forward to, isn't it? Anyway, that's for further down the track. We'll be back on Monday, as I say, with the podcast and the latest from the dressing room ahead of Wrexham. And if you're coming here on Wednesday night, let's hope for a better performance and certainly a better result. Up the Tigers.